am. Te, your. He, indeed. Avaraja, younger sister. Dina, very poor. Hatatsuta, deprived of all children. Prabho, oh my Lord. Datamarhasi, you deserved to give some gift. Mandaya, to me who am so poor. Anga, my dear brother. Imam, this. Chadamham, last. Prajam, child. Translation, my Lord, my brother, I am very poor, being bereft of all my children. But still, I am your younger sister, and therefore it would be worthy of you to give me this last child as a gift. You can repeat, my Lord, my brother.
My Lord, my brother.
I am very poor.
Very poor.
Being bereft of all my children.
Being bereft of all my children.
But still, I am your younger sister.
But still, I am your younger sister.
And therefore, it would be worthy of you.
Therefore, it would be worthy of you
to give me this last child as a gift.
to give me this last child as a gift.
Thank you. So there's no purport to this text. The next text has a very short purport. And the text after that, no purport. And the text after that has a substantial purport. So we'll just continue reading. Text 7. Shisuduvacha upaguyatmajam meham rudatcha dina dinavat yachitastang venir varshya ahastadachite kala. Shukadeva Goswami continued piteously, embracing her daughter and crying. Devaki begged Kamsa for the child, but he was so cruel that he chastised her and forcibly snatched the child from her hands. So, purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, Ki Jai. Although Devaki was crying like a very poor woman, actually she was not poor, and therefore the word used here is dinavat. It means like a poor woman, but like a poor person. She had already given birth to Krishna, therefore, who could have been richer than she? Even the demigods had come to offer prayers to Devaki, but she played the part of a poor, piteously afflicted woman because she wanted to save the daughter of Yashoda. So we're just going to read on. Tham grihitva charanayor jata matram swasu sutam opotayat shila prachte swarton mulita soritaha. Having uprooted all relationships with her sister because of intense selfishness, Kamsa, who was sitting on his knees, grasped the newborn child by the legs and tried to dash her against the surface of a stone. Yuck. Actually, it's described by the Acharyas, probably doesn't have a purport here, that she was covered, the child was covered with the amniot and amniot, whatever you pronounce it, fluid. And also was just like mushy or whatever. Yuck. And that's what Jiva Goswami states. And text 9. Sattha dastat samupatja satyo devyam baram gata adrishyatanuja Vishnu sayudashta mahabhuja. The child, Yogamaya Devi, the younger sister of Lord Vishnu, slipped upward from Kamsa's hands and appeared in the sky as Devi, the goddess Durga, with 8 arms, completely equipped with weapons. So purport, Kamsa tried to dash the child downward against a piece of stone, but since she was Yoga Maya, the younger sister of Lord Vishnu, she slipped upward and assumed the form of the goddess Durga. The word Anuja, meaning the younger sister, is significant. When Vishnu or Krishna took birth from Devaki, he must have simultaneously taken birth from Yashoda also. Otherwise, how could Yogamaya have been Anuja, the Lord's younger sister? So these are very interesting points. So, Om Yana Tipadandasha Gananjana Shilakaya Chakshur Meditam Yena Tasmai Shigurave Maha. So, of course, Prabhupada is actually making reference to the purport by Srila Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur, in which Srila Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur states that Yashoda Mai had previously given birth to Krishna. And that's the story I've told several times before, but it bears telling again. That, of course, we have the statement in the Brahma Samhita, Goloka eva nivashyati okilat vibhuta. Goloka, of course means Goloka, eva, thus, and nivashyati is not leaving. And then akilat vibhuta, and at the same time he's everywhere. This, of course, is the Achincha Veda Tattva philosophy. How the Lord is one in everything, one, and also everything simultaneously. Achincha Veda Tattva. So, and of course, this refers to several different things. One is the Lord's expansions, because when Krishna is in Mathura or Dwarka, he is an expansion of Krishna in Vrindavan. He is Vasudev Krishna. As we mentioned many times before, one has to be careful how they pronounce the word Vasudev or Vasudev. Vasudev refers to the father of Krishna in Mathura. Vasudev refers to Krishna in Mathura. And actually in the Bhagavatam, we start the Bhagavatam by Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We don't say Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Vasudevaya. So Sanskrit is very specific in how you pronounce it. Actually every language is. You pronounce something differently and it's completely opposite meaning to it. So anyway, one meaning of Goloka Nivashyati Akilat Bhuta is that Krishna has his Vishnu Tattva expansions which are everywhere, including the Paramatma, of course the Garbhodaksha Vishnu, Paramatma, and Mahavishnu, who are plenary portions of Krishna. That's one meaning. Another meaning is Mayatatamidam Savam Jagadavyaktit Murtina Matstani Sarvabhutani Naham Teshvavastata. That everything is Krishna's energy. Just like Prabhupada would sometimes mention that we're sitting, in one sense, we're sitting on Krishna right here, because it's his energy. Of course, we're not sitting on Krishna in his spiritual body, but Krishna is there. So that's another meaning of that Krishna is everywhere. And also, another meaning of Krishna is everywhere is that Krishna is expanded as is Mami Vamsa Jiva Loke, Jiva Bhuta Sanatana, Manasashtani Andriyani Prapatikani Stani Karshati. That Krishna is everywhere because he's expanded as the Jiva souls. So we are like parts and parcels, Angsa, part and parcel of Krishna. So, in other words, everything, everywhere, is related to Krishna. Ham sarvasya prabhava matak sarvam pravartate. Everything comes from him. Everything comes from his energies, material energy, spiritual energy, expansions, and jiva souls, marginal energy, and shaktis and everything like that. So, in one sense, Krishna is everything, isn't it? In another sense, he's different from everything. So, anyway, Goloka Evinivashiti, Krishna never leaves Vrindavan. So, it's really not possible for Krishna, or Brajendra Nandana, to be born in Mathura. It's just not possible. So obviously, he has taken birth from Yashodamaya. And that's what Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur states in his commentary, and Prabhupada is making reference to this commentary right here. He says, otherwise, how could Yogamaya have been Anuja, the Lord's younger sister? Now it's interesting, Jiva Goswami gives a little bit different take on this whole statement here of the, in the verse where the Anuja is used. Anuja, it's that's here in the verse. Adrishyat ta nuja Vishnu. So another take on this, according to Srila Jiva Goswami, is that Krishna actually manifested himself in the mind of Yashodamaya before actually Yogamaya was born, or the girl was born from Yashoda, which is interesting. So that's another way that he explains it. Another way that Jiva Goswami explains it, it's interesting to hear the different acharyas' explanations. Another way that Jiva Goswami explains it is that because Yashoda and Devaki are so close, they considered each one's children, others' children, to be their own. And so, that's another way that this can be explained. Anyway, that's Jiva Goswami. So let's talk about Yogamaya. Yogamaya, and it's interesting, here we have Yogamaya appearing as Durga. Now that's quite shocking, because Yogamaya is the internal potency of the Lord, and Durga is the external potency of the Lord. Well, the reason for that is that Yogamaya here is expanding in order to threaten Kamsa. Just like when Krishna kills the demons, even in Vrindavan, he doesn't kill the demons as in his original form. Krishna expands even in Vrindavan when he's killing the demons as Vasudeva Krishna. Because Brajendra Nandana doesn't kill any demons. Which is interesting. Actually, Prabhupada explains that. That Krishna in his original form, he's only engaged in loving exchanges with the devotees. And of course, part of those loving exchanges is sometimes the devotees are fearful, and for his safety and stuff like that. But basically, the killing is only done by his expansion. So with Durga too, Yogamaya herself doesn't kill anybody, but she expands to kill people. Of course, the word Durga means, basically, as Prabhupada sometimes translates the word Durga as warden in the prison house. Because the warden in the prison house keeps people in, obviously, otherwise they wouldn't have a job. It's like one of our devotees, Krishna was a warden in the federal penitentiary. And the word Durga means to move with great difficulty. But that's not Yogamaya's business. Yogamaya's business is to actually sometimes keep Krishna from remembering his God, and keep the devotees from remembering his God, and make all the arrangements for Krishna's pastimes. So here we find Yogamaya expanding herself. Now, elsewhere in Krishna's pastimes, when Krishna appeared on earth over 5,000 years ago, Yogamaya appears in different ways. First of all, in the pastimes outside of Vrindavan, Yogamaya appears as Subhadra. And Subhadra is not the daughter of Devaki or the daughter of Yashodamaya. Subhadra is the daughter of one of Vasudeva's other wives. For those of you who don't like polygamy, he had several wives. Nowadays, of course, Polygamy is generally not recommended, unless you're a Mormon. It's still not recommended. Anyway, so, actually, I'm not going to get into the whole description of sapatni, what that means. Sapatni, anyway. Those who understand a little Sanskrit understand what I'm talking about, but I'm not going to talk about that. So, anyway, so Vasudeva had several wives, and one of them, it's not described what her name was, at least I don't find that, and I haven't seen that in the commentaries, what her name was. But it was her who gave birth to Subhadra. And Subhadra, very interesting, got married to Arjuna. And Subhadra and Arjuna, of course, they had a child, Abhimanyu. And Abhimanyu had a child, and of course that was Parikshit Maharaj. So the reason for that, reason for Arjuna, one of the reasons for Arjuna marrying Subhadra was so that the Kuru dynasty would come to an end. The Kuru dynasty had actually been perverted, contaminated, and so it was necessary to end the whole dynasty. And we see that Arjuna was not genetically a member of the Kuru dynasty, even though, like, technically, yes, he was a Kuru. Sometimes you find the Kurus being described as those who opposed the Pandavas, but actually they were all Kurus. Prabhupada describes like that. And sometimes, it depends on the context. You say Kauravas may indicate Duryodhana and his brothers, and Dhritarashtra and the Pandavas. But in another context, the Kauravas, the Kurus is everyone. It's the Kuru dynasty. But Arjuna was not a member of that dynasty. Why do we say that? Because who was his father? His father was Indra. And who was his mother? Kunti. And Kunti, it's interesting, was actually a member of the Yadu dynasty. Think about that. Because she was the sister of Vasudeva. Because she was a member of the Yadu dynasty. That's why Krishna was calling Kunti Aunt Kunti. Aunt or aunt, depending on how you pronounce it. So it was necessary to have to actually have Parikshit and later on Janamejaya as members of the Yadu dynasty. So that they're actually Yadu dynasty, although you may say they're Kuru dynasty, some technicality, but actually genetically it's Yadu dynasty. And so Subhadra played that role, and she's Yogamaya. And it's also interesting that Subhadra, and this is actually very traumatic, that even though Subhadra is Yogamaya, she actually had to lose her son in the battle of Kurukshetra. So in other words, and she was lamenting. So you say Yogamaya makes puts other people in illusion, but she actually put herself into illusion. So she could lament having lost Abhimanyu. So that's one manifestation of Yogamaya. And then in Vrindavan, we have Yogamaya manifest as Purnamasi, who's an old lady. Which is really interesting. She's the mother of Sandapani Muni. Sandapani Muni, of course, he had his ashram in Ujjain, which we have a temple there. And actually in our temple in Ujjain, those of you who've been there, there's actually a Vyasa-san for Sandapani Muni. You've seen that, haven't you? You've been there. I've been there several times. And so, anyway, so Sandapani Muni sent her and also his son, whose name was Marumango, to Vrindavan to assist Krishna in the pastimes. So anyway, so Yogamaya manifests herself in many, many different ways to assist Krishna in the pastimes. And, as we mentioned, Yogamaya is an old lady, and she's actually sometimes carrying messages between Radha and Krishna, and she's in on all the details. It's interesting. She's in on all the trickery and details, and she's assisting in all the trickery and details in these different pastimes. So anyway, so this is Yogamaya, Anuja, the Lord's younger sister. So this particular Yogamaya, this particular manifestation of Yogamaya, expanded as Durga, and it's not described that she appears in that particular form later on in the pastimes. So Yogamaya, in other words, Yogamaya is like all around Krishna's pastimes, arranging for all sorts of different things, even as her expansion, Durga. And of course in Bengal, they do worship Durga, and they have this, of course the biggest ceremony in Bengal is Durga Puja. And they even have one particular story about Durga where she gets angry at Lord Shiva. You've seen this? Where she's standing on Lord Shiva's chest, she knocks him to the ground or something like that. So we are all under the jurisdiction right now. It's insofar as how much we are not Krishna conscious, we are under the jurisdiction of Durga. Daivayeshu Gunamaya Amamaya Durachya. Mama Eva Ye Prapajante. Isn't it? We're under this is Krishna. Daivayeshu Gunamaya Amamaya Durachya. Durachya, the word Dura is the word again, the prefix, Durachya. The living entities are under the jurisdiction of this Durga energy. And she's putting us in illusion like Yogamaya puts the residents of Vrindavan, and has us think that we can enjoy this material world. So we're being cheated by her, but when we actually become Krishna conscious, he helps us take shelter of Krishna. So any questions or comments about these points, about Durga, Krishna being all pervasive, never leaving Vrindavan? These are important philosophical points. Krishna is always in Vrindavan, never leaves Vrindavan. Even today, if you go to Braj, Krishna is there, but he is not manifest to you. Aprakata, that means he's unmanifest. But he's there in Vrindavan. But he's not going to manifest, I just want to finish with this thing, we'll take a question. He's not going to manifest openly to people, just like when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in Vrindavan. People were thinking Krishna was dancing on the heads of the Kaliya serpent, but it was actually just a fisherman holding his lantern up so that the fish get attracted by light at night. And everybody was doing that, and even Lord Chaitanya's servant wanted to go see, Balabhadra, he wanted to go see Krishna dancing, and Lord Chaitanya just slapped him in the face. He said, what do you think? And then later on, Lord Chaitanya asked someone who was intelligent, have you seen Krishna? Because they were going around like that. So people are just so much in illusion, they can convince themselves they're seeing Krishna when they're not seeing Krishna. The mind is very fertile. You can convince yourself almost of anything. I gave the example the other day that, one time I tried with my mind to convince myself, not that I was seeing Krishna, I wasn't that advanced, to convince myself I was listening to a particular song, and I began to hear the song. Seriously. I began to hear the song, because it was a song I loved very much. It wasn't My Sweet Lord, but anyway, some Maya song. And I just heard it. So the mind is very strong, all these illusions, people think about past lives and all that. Just like Hare Krishna. Actually, Krishna states in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the mind is the friend of the conditioned soul, his enemy as well. One who has conquered the mind is his best friend. The 6th chapter of Gita, you can read it. If you conquer your mind and achieve equanimity, your mind's your best friend. Otherwise, it's your worst enemy. So you have someone who, it's not there. Anyway, the mind is not there. That's the brain. So you have something that can actually be your best friend. Wow. If you can conquer it, like an oxen, if you can conquer it, not conquer, train an oxen, then the oxen can do so many things. Otherwise, it'll drag you all over the place. So like I gave the example, one day I went horseback riding. Not here, but it was in Florida. And I didn't conquer the horse. And it took me out to the next county. And screaming, let me go. And I had to jump off the horse eventually. So, you have a question?
Is Vrindavan an expansion of Yogamaya?
That's an interesting question. I have not read that she's directly an expansion of Yogamaya, but she's an eternal associate of the Lord, and who helps arrange for the Lord's pastimes too. I mean, she arranges the pastime forests in Vrindavan under the instruction of Yogamaya. And it's described that all 4 seasons, actually there's 6 seasons described. They have more than 4 seasons. So the 6 seasons are simultaneously manifest in different forests of Vrindavan. But that doesn't mean that one season is snow. That's never described. This autumn, winter, whatever, spring, whatever. I don't remember which the 6 seasons. But she's making all the tasty arrangements. The kunjas, she arranges the kunjas, the bushes around there. And she definitely works with Yogamaya. I've never read, and maybe someone else has read, about her ontological position. I mean, obviously she's not a jiva soul like you and I. But Yogamaya is actually Shakti. And ultimately, Yogamaya expands from the Adi Shakti. So I guess you could say, yes, she's Shakti. Yeah, Vrindavan is a Shakti. So whether she comes from Yogamaya or there's another type of expansion. So the Adi Shakti, of course, is Srimati Radharani, who was always planning on how to give Krishna pleasure. And Krishna's Shaktis are like that. Parasya Shakti Vidaiva Shugate Svabhavaki Gyanavala Kriyacha. Krishna's Shaktis are always planning. They're all planning, except for the Jiva Shakti. We're not planning to give Krishna. I'm not planning to give Krishna. I'm planning, how can I eat? How can I eat my quinoa? There's my plan in my mind. But Jiva souls can go either way. I mean, sometimes I'm planning how to please Krishna, and sometimes I'm planning how to please myself. Depends on what time of day we're talking about. So, we're mixed bag, We're right on the margin. We keep jumping from one side to the other every day. Oh, not every day, every minute. We keep jumping. Oh. It's just like Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes what the marginal potency is. It's like where the ocean comes up to the shore, that line, that demarcation between, where there's wet and when there's dry. But then if you actually walk, you'll see that the waves are continually coming. And sometimes something is dry, and then immediately, or 2 seconds later, it's wet, and then it's dry again, and then it's wet. That's our position. It's a very appropriate description as Jiva souls, Vishnu Shakti Parat Prabda Chedrakyatya Tata Parat. We're also transcendental, but we're attracted to Vidya Karma Samganya Tritiya Shakti Ishida. We're attracted to the Vidya, ignorant activity, energy of the Lord. But even Durga is a pure devotee of the Lord. She's also called Vaishnavi. So these Shaktis, which are all expanding from Radharani, are always thinking how to please Krishna. And Durga pleases Krishna by reforming us in different ways. It's what do you call it, tough love? Like my mother said, because I love you so much, I'm punishing you. And I said to my mother, of course, don't love me so much. Or another time I said, what would happen if you hated me? You're in real trouble. So anyway, so Durga is a Shakti and Vrinda Devi is a Shakti. They're always just meditating how to please Krishna. And they have different varieties of service. But they're not Jiva souls. They're definitely not Jiva souls. Devotees, Jiva souls cannot be Shaktis, cannot become Shaktis. We can become assistants to the Shaktis. Just like generally the Goswamis of Vrindavan, they're Manjari gopis. That means they assist. They're young, prepubescent. But as I was describing before, it's not the question of the body that they manifest in the spiritual world, it's the mood of service. From the mood of service manifests the body. It's not from the body manifests the mood of service. Because they desire to please Krishna and Radharani in a particular way. So that desire to please manifests their spiritual body. Does that make sense? So the sahajism, the spiritual body, comes first. But that's really not the point. People ask, what is my spiritual body? What does it look like? But that's not really the point. The point should be, how do I want to please Krishna? Or how does Krishna want me to please him? So they're putting the cart before the horse. Does everybody understand that? They're putting the body, which they're already identifying with the body, and they want to find another body to identify with and enjoy. That's the problem. But we should identify with the mood of service. In other words, one desires to serve the divine couple by helping to arrange the bower or something like that. And then because of that service, the best form to have in that would be, let's say, Manjari Gopi or something like that. So you have to understand the hierarchy or the priority in that way. And when you have the right mood of service, concentrate on that, not what type of body you're going to have in the spiritual world. Just like not everybody, most people have it backwards. So, yes?
Yeah, I have a statement and a question that relates. Also, it relates to what you have mentioned about the mind. It can be tricked. But the statement is, as a man, if a man thinks he's right, then he's right. But if a man thinks he's right, or if a man thinks he's wrong, he's right. That's how powerful the mind is. Now,
That's
to the
the mind.
if a person thinks he sees Krishna, but if you're a high level of purification, high spiritual level, then
He may see Krishna.
you can actually.
Yeah, well, he can actually see Krishna, but many times people think they see Krishna and they're not seeing Krishna. That was the point I'm making. Yeah. The mind is very powerful. Someone made a comment that their understanding is Vrindavan Tulsi is an aspect of Yogamaya. That may be, but I have to see the Shastric injunction. I'm not going to make any statements on Tattva unless I actually see the Shastric quote. It can make sense. It can be something I heard, but something I heard has to come from Shastra to be bona fide.